The cockpit door slams shut in Malcolm Washington's face as security drags him across the jet bridge. "You can't do this," he shouts, badge in hand. Passengers stare in disbelief. Malcolm reaches for his phone. "I'm grounding this entire aircraft," he says coldly. "Nobody's going anywhere today." Before I dive into this incredible story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more shocking stories about injustice and triumph. This one's gonna make your blood boil and then make you stand up and cheer. The day had started like any other for Malcolm Washington. At 42 years old, he was a respected pilot with 15 years of experience at Horizon Airlines. His alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. and he slipped out of bed quietly, trying not to wake his wife Jasmine. In the kitchen of their Atlanta home, he brewed a strong cup of coffee and reviewed his flight plan for the day. Malcolm was particularly excited about this assignment. After years of flying the same routes, he would be piloting a new course to Chicago on the Airbus, a 321 of the more sophisticated aircraft in Horizon's fleet. As he straightened his tie and adjusted his pilot's cap in the hallway mirror, his teenage daughter Zoe stumbled down the stairs, still half asleep. "Early flight today, Dad?" she asked, giving him a sleepy hug. "Yeah, sweetheart. New route too. I'll be home tomorrow night though," Malcolm replied, returning her embrace. "Kill it up there," Zoe said with a smile. It was their usual farewell ritual. As Malcolm gathered his flight bag, Jasmine appeared in her bathrobe, handing him a travel mug of fresh coffee. "Text me when you land in Chicago," she reminded him, kissing him goodbye. Malcolm nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. He couldn't help remembering the promotion board results that had been announced last week. Once again, he had been passed over for the position of chief pilot, despite having more flight hours and experience than Bradley Collins, the white pilot who received the promotion. It wasn't the first time this had happened either. 3 times in the past 5 years, Malcolm had applied for advancement, and 3 times he'd been inexplicably overlooked. "You okay?" Jasmine asked, noticing his distant expression. "Yeah, just thinking about the route," he lied, not wanting to bring up the promotion disappointment again. They'd already discussed it enough over the weekend. Malcolm's drive to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was quick in the pre-dawn darkness. He parked in the employee lot, went through security with his credentials, and headed to the crew briefing room. His first leg of the day wasn't as pilot, but as a passenger. He would be deadheading to Charlotte, where he would board a different plane as captain for the flight to Chicago. Deadheading was standard procedure in the airline industry. Pilots frequently needed to travel to different airports to begin their assigned routes. Dressed in his full pilot's uniform with 4 stripes on his sleeves, Malcolm boarded the 6:15 a.m. flight to Charlotte. As he stepped onto the plane, he immediately noticed flight attendant Heather Brooks giving him a slightly different greeting than she had given the white passengers ahead of him. "Your seat is that way," she said curtly, barely making eye contact, unlike the warm smile she'd offered to others. Malcolm found his seat in the main cabin and stowed his bag. Though he was in uniform, he was traveling as a passenger for this leg. 2 businessmen in the row behind him were discussing the aircraft's features. "This model has the worst legroom," one complained. "Actually, it's not the model. This airline just configured it with more seats than recommended," the other replied. Malcolm resisted the urge to turn around and correct them. The legroom issue was actually due to the retrofitted cabin design that had been implemented last year to comply with new safety regulations. As he settled in, he overheard a security officer named Brett Thompson speaking to another crew member near the galley. "Another one of these affirmative action hires," Brett murmured, glancing in Malcolm's direction. "They'll give anyone wings these days." Malcolm pretended not to hear, but the comment stung. He'd graduated top of his class from the Air Force Academy and had logged over 12000 flight hours. There was nothing affirmative action about his qualifications. As the safety demonstration began, Malcolm noticed a procedural error in the way Heather demonstrated the oxygen mask deployment. When the presentation ended and she passed by his seat, he politely said, "Excuse me, but the new protocol requires demonstrating that the mask goes over both mouth and nose before securing. It changed last month." Heather's face hardened. "I'm well aware of the protocols, sir," she said, emphasizing the last word with a hint of sarcasm. "I'm just letting you know, as a fellow crew member," Malcolm explained, touching his uniform lapel. "I've been flying for 12 years, Heather retorted. "I don't need passenger corrections." She walked away before Malcolm could respond, leaving him with an uneasy feeling that would only grow stronger as the day progressed. After landing in Charlotte, Malcolm made his way to Gate E7, where his assigned flight to Chicago was already boarding. He would be piloting this leg, but first he needed to complete his pre-flight duties. As standard procedure, Malcolm conducted a walk-around inspection of the aircraft before passengers boarded. It was during this inspection that Malcolm noticed something concerning. There was a small puddle of hydraulic fluid beneath the left wing near the landing gear. Hydraulic systems were crucial for multiple functions, including operating the landing gear, flaps, and brakes. Even a minor leak could potentially escalate into a serious safety issue during flight. Malcolm photographed the leak with his phone and headed into the aircraft to speak with the ground maintenance team. Inside, passengers were already boarding. He approached Heather Brooks, who by coincidence had been reassigned to this flight as well. "Excuse me, I need to speak with the captain and maintenance about a potential hydraulic fluid leak I observed during my walk-around," Malcolm explained professionally. Heather glanced at him with immediate recognition and suspicion. "Are you supposed to be on this flight too?" "I'm the pilot for this leg," Malcolm clarified, showing her his ID and flight assignment. "Captain Washington. The scheduled captain should be finishing his pre-flight checks. I need to inform him about a maintenance issue before we proceed." Heather's expression changed subtly. "I'll pass along your concern," she said dismissively. "Please take your seat in the cockpit through the front. The first officer is already there." Malcolm stood his ground. "This isn't something to just pass along. I need to speak directly with maintenance and the current captain. There's a hydraulic leak that requires immediate attention." "Sir, we're in the middle of boarding," Heather responded, her voice tight. "I said I'll handle it." As they were speaking, a white businessman in an expensive suit, Wesley Parker, according to his frequent flyer tag, approached the flight attendant. "Excuse me, miss," he interrupted. "I noticed some fluid leaking under the wing when I was coming up the jetway. Might want to have someone check that out." Heather's demeanor transformed instantly. "Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, Mr. Parker. I'll alert the captain and maintenance right away." She immediately picked up the interphone to call the cockpit. Malcolm stood there stunned by the difference in treatment. "That's exactly what I just reported to you," he said quietly. Heather ignored him, speaking into the phone. As she did, the head flight attendant, Pamela Richardson, approached. "Is there a problem here?" Pamela asked, looking between Malcolm and Heather. "This passenger is insisting on speaking with the captain about a maintenance issue, but I've already alerted them," Heather explained, conveniently omitting that Malcolm was actually the incoming pilot. "I'm not a passenger," Malcolm corrected firmly. "I'm Captain Malcolm Washington, scheduled to pilot the next leg. I conducted a walk-around and identified a hydraulic leak that needs immediate attention. I'm trying to speak directly with the captain currently in the cockpit and the maintenance team." Pamela's eyes narrowed. "If you're the pilot for the next leg, why aren't you in the cockpit already?" "Because I need to report this safety issue first, and your colleague refused to assist," Malcolm explained, his frustration growing. "Sir, please lower your voice," Pamela said, though Malcolm had been speaking at a normal volume. "I haven't raised my voice," Malcolm replied evenly. "But this is a serious safety concern that needs immediate attention." Several passengers had begun watching the exchange. Pamela leaned closer to Malcolm and whispered, "You're disrupting the boarding process. If you don't take your seat now, I'll have to call security." Malcolm pulled out his pilot credentials again. "Look at my ID. I am Captain Malcolm Washington. I'm reporting a safety issue as required by FAA regulations and company policy. I need to speak with the cockpit crew and maintenance now." Instead of examining his credentials, Pamela stepped away and used her radio. "We have a disruptive individual at the front of the cabin. Security assistance needed." Within minutes, Brett Thompson, the same security officer who had made the affirmative action comment earlier, appeared at the aircraft door with another officer, Frank Miller. "What seems to be the problem?" Brett asked, looking directly at Pamela rather than Malcolm. "This person is refusing to follow crew instructions and is disrupting boarding," Pamela stated. Malcolm held up his credentials again. "I am Captain Malcolm Washington, scheduled to pilot the next leg of this aircraft. I've identified a safety concern that requires immediate attention. These flight attendants are refusing to allow me to speak with the cockpit crew or maintenance." Brett barely glanced at Malcolm's ID. "Sir, you need to follow crew instructions regardless of who you are." Several passengers had begun filming the interaction on their phones. Malcolm noticed this and remained composed. "I am following proper safety protocols," Malcolm insisted. "There is a hydraulic fluid leak that needs to be inspected before this aircraft is cleared for takeoff." "Sir, if you don't take your assigned seat now, we'll have to remove you from the aircraft," Frank stated firmly. "My assigned seat is in the cockpit, and I'm trying to report a safety issue as required by federal regulations," Malcolm explained, his patience waning. Brett reached for Malcolm's arm. "Come with us, sir." Malcolm pulled his arm away. "Don't touch me. I have a right and obligation to report safety concerns." The situation was escalating quickly. Passengers watched in disbelief as security personnel confronted a uniformed pilot. Malcolm's phone rang. It was Jasmine calling to check if he'd arrived in Charlotte safely, but he couldn't answer now. "This is your final warning," Brett said, reaching for Malcolm again. "Take your hands off me," Malcolm stated firmly, as Brett grabbed his arm. "I am Captain Malcolm Washington of Horizon Airlines. Check my credentials." Brett tightened his grip. "Your credentials don't matter right now. You're interfering with the boarding process." The cabin had grown silent as passengers watched the confrontation unfold. Some had their phones raised, recording everything. Malcolm was painfully aware of the optics. A black man in a pilot's uniform being physically restrained by two white security officers. "I need to speak with Captain Roy Bennett immediately," Malcolm insisted. "There is a safety issue with this aircraft that needs attention before takeoff." As if summoned by his name, Captain Roy Bennett emerged from the cockpit, his four-stripe uniform identical to Malcolm's. "What's going on out here?" Bennett asked, looking between the security officers and Malcolm. "Captain Bennett," Malcolm said with relief. "I'm Malcolm Washington, scheduled to take over as captain for the next leg. During my walk-around, I observed a hydraulic fluid leak near the left landing gear. It needs immediate inspection before this aircraft is cleared for departure." Bennett frowned, looking at the flight attendants. "Why wasn't I informed of this?" Before anyone could answer, Brett interjected. "Sir, this individual has been disruptive and refusing to follow crew instructions. We've been called to remove him from the aircraft." "That's not what happened," Malcolm objected. "I reported a safety concern and was dismissed. When I insisted on speaking directly with you or maintenance, I was threatened with removal." Bennett seemed unsure of how to proceed, glancing between Malcolm, the security officers, and the flight attendants. Finally, he said, "We have protocols for handling these situations. Security, please continue with your duties. I'll have maintenance check the issue." Malcolm couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're not going to verify my identity. I'm your relief pilot. If there's been a miscommunication, you can sort it out with the gate agent after you've been escorted off," Bennett replied dismissively. "We can't delay boarding for this." "This is unacceptable," Malcolm protested, as Brett and Frank took hold of his arms. "I'm following safety protocols. That leak needs to be inspected before this plane takes off." As the security officers began forcibly moving Malcolm toward the exit, his uniform jacket tore at the shoulder. His phone fell to the floor, Jasmine's call still coming through. Malcolm tried to reach for it, but Frank blocked him. "My personal property is still on the aircraft," Malcolm stated. "It will be collected and returned to you," Brett replied curtly. From several rows back, a black woman stood up. "This isn't right," she called out. "He showed you his ID. He's a pilot." "Ma'am, please remain seated or you'll be removed as well," Frank warned. The woman, Trina Jefferson, reluctantly sat down but continued filming the incident on her phone. As Malcolm was pulled backward through the jet bridge, he caught sight of Captain Bennett returning to the cockpit without giving the reported safety issue any apparent consideration. The cockpit door slammed shut in Malcolm's face as security dragged him across the jet bridge. "You can't do this," he shouted, badge in hand. Passengers stared in disbelief. Malcolm reached for his phone. "I'm grounding this entire aircraft," he said coldly. "Nobody's going anywhere today." In the terminal, Malcolm was released roughly by the security officers. His uniform was disheveled, his captain's jacket torn at the shoulder. Brett handed him over to Terminal Supervisor Gregory Adams, a middle-aged man with a permanent scowl. "We have a disruptive individual removed from Flight 1382, Brett reported. Claims to be a pilot. "I am a pilot," Malcolm insisted again, presenting his credentials. "I reported a safety issue and was removed for it. I need to speak with Horizon Airlines operations immediately." Adams barely glanced at Malcolm's ID. "If you were removed from the aircraft, you need to leave the secure area now or face arrest." "You're not even going to verify my identity?" Malcolm asked incredulously. "Security has already made their determination," Adams replied. "I suggest you comply before this escalates further." Malcolm looked around at the busy terminal. Passengers from his flight were emerging, many giving him sympathetic or curious looks. Some still had their phones out, documenting the aftermath. Malcolm realized he would get nowhere with Adams, whose mind was clearly made up. "Fine," Malcolm said, "but I'm contacting Horizon Operations and the FAA. That aircraft has a safety issue that needs to be addressed before takeoff." "Do whatever you need to do away from my gate," Adams responded dismissively. As Malcolm walked away, the humiliation burned through him. 15 years of exemplary service, thousands of flight hours, and he had been treated like a criminal for following safety protocols. And all of his belongings, including his phone, were still on the aircraft. Malcolm stood in the bustling Charlotte terminal, his torn pilot's uniform drawing curious glances from passing travelers. The humiliation he felt was quickly being replaced by determination. He approached an airport courtesy phone and dialed the direct number for Horizon Airlines Operations Center, a number every pilot memorized. "Horizon Operations, this is Denise Michaels," a voice answered. "This is Captain Malcolm Washington," he stated firmly. "Employee ID 285493. I was just forcibly removed from Flight 1382 to Chicago after reporting a hydraulic fluid leak during my pre-flight inspection." There was a pause on the line. "Captain Washington, you're scheduled to pilot the Chicago leg. Why would you be removed from the aircraft?" "That's what I'd like to know," Malcolm replied. "The flight attendants refused to acknowledge my report, security was called, and I was physically removed from the plane despite identifying myself as crew. My belongings, including my phone, are still on board." "Let me verify your credentials," Denise said, the sound of typing audible in the background. After a moment, she continued, "I see your schedule. You are indeed supposed to be piloting the Chicago leg. This makes no sense. What makes even less sense is that Captain Bennett was made aware of the safety concern and still allowed security to remove me," Malcolm explained. "There is a visible hydraulic fluid leak near the left landing gear that requires inspection before that aircraft is cleared for takeoff. This is a serious situation on multiple fronts." Denise acknowledged, her tone changing. "Captain Washington, I need to escalate this immediately. Any safety concern reported by qualified personnel must be fully investigated per company policy and FAA regulations." "Exactly," Malcolm agreed. "And I was prevented from following those procedures." "Where are you now?" Denise asked. "Terminal D, near Gate D7, Malcolm replied, looking at the nearest sign. "Stay there. I'm contacting the FAA duty officer and our regional director. Someone will meet you shortly." Malcolm hung up and immediately used the courtesy phone again to call the FAA regional office. After identifying himself and briefly explaining the situation, he was connected to Duty Officer Samuel Washington, no relation. "Captain Washington, this is a serious report," Samuel confirmed after hearing Malcolm's account. "Both the safety concern and the manner in which you were prevented from reporting it are troubling. I'm dispatching Inspector Keith Donovan to the airport now. He should arrive within 30 minutes. "The aircraft may be attempting to depart before then," Malcolm warned. I'll contact air traffic control and put a temporary hold on that flight until we can investigate the reported safety issue, Samuel assured him. Can you be reached at this number? No, this is an airport courtesy phone. My cell phone is still on the aircraft with my other belongings. I'll remain in the terminal near gate D7. After hanging up, Malcolm noticed people around him looking at their phones and then glancing in his direction. A young woman approached hesitantly. Excuse me, sir, are you the pilot who was just dragged off a Horizon flight? She asked, holding up her phone. On the screen was a social media post with video of his removal, already accumulating thousands of views. Yes, that was me, Malcolm confirmed grimly. It's going viral, she informed him. People are outraged. Malcolm thanked her for the information as his mind raced. The public exposure added another dimension to the situation. His heart sank as he realized Jasmine and Zoe might see these videos before he could explain what had happened. As predicted, the courtesy phone rang a few minutes later. The airport operator informed him he had a call from Jasmine, Washington. Malcolm, what's happening? Jasmine's voice was tense with worry. Zoe just showed me a video of you being dragged off a plane. Are you okay? I'm fine, physically at least, Malcolm assured her. There was a safety issue with the aircraft. When I reported it, I was dismissed and ultimately removed from the plane. The FAA is involved now. This is outrageous, Jasmine said, her voice hardening. It's happening again, isn't it? Just like with Southwest last year. Malcolm knew exactly what she meant. Another black pilot had faced similar discrimination at a different airline, though not quite as dramatic as his current situation. I'm handling it, Malcolm said firmly. The FAA and Horizon operations are both taking it seriously now. I'm coming to Charlotte, Jasmine decided. I'll book the next flight. Before Malcolm could respond, he noticed a small crowd gathering near the windows overlooking the tarmac. Flight 1382 was still at the gate, though it should have departed 20 minutes ago. I think the FAA hold is in effect, Malcolm told Jasmine. Look, I need to go. I'll call you back from this same number soon. As he hung up, Malcolm saw the first news crew arriving in the terminal, a reporter and cameraman from a local Charlotte station. The story was spreading faster than he had anticipated. Have you ever been in a situation where nobody would listen to you even though you were right? Comment #shown if you would have stood your ground like Malcolm did, or comment #2 if you would have handled it differently. Hit that like button if you believe racial discrimination in the workplace should never be tolerated, and subscribe for more stories about justice being served. But what will Malcolm do next? Will the FAA actually ground the flight? And how will Horizon Airlines respond when they realize they've made a terrible mistake that's now going viral? Keep watching to find out. 35 minutes after Malcolm's call, FAA Inspector Keith Donovan arrived at Gate D7, easily spotting Malcolm in his pilot's uniform with the torn shoulder. Donovan, a serious-looking man in his 50s with graying hair and a government ID badge, approached directly. Captain Washington Keith Donovan, FAA. He extended his hand. I understand we have both a safety concern and a crew management issue to address. That's correct, Malcolm confirmed, shaking his hand. I identified a hydraulic fluid leak during my pre-flight inspection. When I attempted to report it through proper channels, I was dismissed and ultimately removed from the aircraft. Show me exactly what you observed, Donovan requested, pulling out a tablet. Malcolm used Donovan's tablet to access his cloud storage and pulled up the photos he'd taken of the leak. Here, this is beneath the left wing near the landing gear housing. That's hydraulic fluid, and the accumulation pattern suggests it's an active leak, not residual fluid from maintenance. Donovan examined the photos with a professional eye. This definitely warrants inspection before clearance for takeoff. You followed correct procedures by attempting to report it. He looked up at the departure board. Flight 1382 is showing a delay. The temporary hold I requested is in effect. Inside the aircraft, passengers were growing restless. Through the terminal windows, Malcolm could see flight attendants moving up and down the aisles, likely fielding questions about the delay. Captain Bennett and the first officer appeared at the cockpit door, speaking with ground crew who had just boarded. They're probably being informed of the FAA hold now, Donovan observed. Let's find somewhere more private to take your full statement." As they turned to leave, Malcolm spotted Philip Coleman, Horizon Airlines regional director, hurrying through the terminal with two other airline officials. Coleman, a tall man with a perpetually harried expression, made a beeline for Malcolm when he spotted him. "Captain Washington," Coleman called. "We need to speak immediately." "Mr. Coleman, this is Inspector Donovan from the FAA," Malcolm introduced. "He's here investigating both the safety concern I reported and the circumstances of my removal from the aircraft." Coleman's expression tightened. "I see. Well, we're conducting our own internal investigation as well. The situation has been escalated." "I should think so," Malcolm replied evenly. "Where can I retrieve my belongings that were left on the aircraft?" "They're being collected now," Coleman assured him. "In the meantime, perhaps we could all use the airline's private lounge to discuss this matter." Donovan nodded his agreement, and the group made their way to Horizon's premium lounge, which was quickly cleared of other passengers to provide privacy. Once seated, Donovan began the formal interview process, recording Malcolm's statement about both the hydraulic leak and the subsequent events. As Malcolm recounted the details, Coleman's expression grew increasingly concerned. "We've contacted Brett Thompson and Frank Miller from airport security," Coleman interjected when Malcolm finished. "They've been called to explain their actions to their superiors." "What about Captain Bennett and the flight attendants?" Malcolm asked. "They failed to follow basic safety protocols." "They're being interviewed separately," Coleman assured him. "I want to be clear, Captain Washington, that what you experienced does not reflect Horizon Airlines' policies or values." Before Malcolm could respond, another airline official entered the lounge. "Sir, maintenance has completed their inspection of the aircraft. They've confirmed a hydraulic leak exactly where Captain Washington indicated. It's being repaired now, but the aircraft cannot depart until it's resolved and tested." Malcolm exchanged glances with Donovan. The vindication was small comfort given everything that had transpired. "That flight is officially grounded until maintenance clears it," Donovan stated firmly. "And I'll need statements from everyone involved in Captain Washington's removal." Coleman nodded, then turned to Malcolm. "Captain Washington, on behalf of Horizon Airlines, I want to extend our sincere apologies for what occurred today. This should never have happened." "You're right, it shouldn't have," Malcolm agreed. "But it did, and now we need to address why." The lounge door opened again, and a harried-looking PR representative entered with a tablet. "Mr. Coleman, I need to speak with you urgently. The videos of Captain Washington's removal have gone viral. We have media inquiries pouring in, and our social media accounts are being flooded." Coleman excused himself momentarily, and Malcolm used the opportunity to check his watch. The flight should have departed nearly an hour ago. Through the lounge windows, he could see passengers from Flight 1382 beginning to disembark. The aircraft had been officially grounded. When Coleman returned, his face was ashen. "The situation has escalated beyond what we anticipated. Multiple videos from different angles show the entire incident. It doesn't look good for us, Captain Washington." "It wasn't good for me either," Malcolm replied. "We're prepared to offer you immediate compensation for the distress and embarrassment," Coleman began. "I'm not interested in hush money," Malcolm interrupted. "I'm interested in accountability and systemic change." Donovan, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. "Captain Washington, I believe we have enough for my initial report. This will trigger a formal FAA investigation into both the safety issue and the interference with safety reporting procedures." As they concluded the meeting, Malcolm's phone was returned to him by an airline staff member. It was filled with missed calls and messages from Jasmine, from colleagues who had seen the videos, and from several news outlets seeking comment. One text from a fellow pilot simply read, "Saw what happened. Proud of you for standing your ground. We've got your back." At Horizon Airlines corporate headquarters in Dallas, CEO Lawrence Davidson was having the worst Monday of his career. The emergency conference call had been hastily arranged after videos of Malcolm Washington's removal went viral, crashing the airline's stock price by nearly 8% in early trading. "How did we let this happen?" Davidson demanded, addressing the faces on his video conference screen. "We have a black pilot in full uniform being physically dragged off our aircraft after reporting a legitimate safety concern. Do you understand the liability we're facing? The legal team looked grim. We're assessing potential discrimination claims, wrongful removal, violation of whistleblower protections, and possibly defamation, said Patricia Winters, head of legal. The fact that the hydraulic leak was confirmed makes our position significantly weaker. He was right. What's our immediate response? Davidson asked, turning to Marcus Jenkins, the chief communications officer. We've drafted a statement acknowledging a misunderstanding that led to an unfortunate incident, Jenkins replied. We're emphasizing our commitment to safety and proper protocols. That's not going to cut it, Davidson interrupted. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a disaster. What are we doing for Captain Washington right now? Philip Coleman, joining the call from Charlotte, spoke up. We've offered him private car service, a first-class seat on the next flight to Chicago, and compensation for the inconvenience. And Davidson pressed. He declined, Coleman admitted. He's demanding a formal investigation and systemic changes to prevent this from happening to other pilots of color. Davidson rubbed his temples. Of course he is, because he's right. He looked directly at the camera. Coleman, stay with Captain Washington. Make sure he's treated with the utmost respect. Jenkins, we need a stronger statement, one that doesn't try to minimize what happened. And Winters, I want a complete internal investigation launched today. Back in Charlotte, Malcolm sat in the premium lounge reviewing the incident with Jasmine, who had arrived on a flight from Atlanta. She had brought family attorney Robin Foster with her. The company is in full damage control mode, Robin observed, showing Malcolm her tablet. Your removal is the top story on every major news site. Number Black Pilots Matter and number Horizon Discrimination are trending nationwide. I don't want this to become just another viral moment, Malcolm said firmly. I want actual change. Then we use this leverage while we have it, Jasmine advised. They're scared. They should be. Malcolm's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number. He answered to find Alana Reed, a journalist from a major news network, on the line. Captain Washington, we've been trying to reach you for comment on today's incident, she said. Would you be willing to give us an exclusive interview about what happened? Malcolm looked at Robin, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Malcolm decided. I think it's important people hear the full story. As they made arrangements for the interview, Coleman returned with news. Security officers Brett Thompson and Frank Miller have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, he reported. And your pilot union has issued a statement supporting you and condemning your treatment. What about Heather Brooks and Pamela Richardson? Malcolm asked. And Captain Bennett. They were equally responsible. Coleman looked uncomfortable. There's an ongoing internal review of their actions. In other words, nothing yet, Jasmine translated coldly. Malcolm's phone continued to buzz with notifications. Colleagues were sending messages of support along with their own stories of discrimination experienced at Horizon and other airlines. The commonality of these experiences only strengthened Malcolm's resolve. Throughout the afternoon, passengers from Flight 1382 approached Malcolm in the terminal. Many had witnessed his removal and wanted to offer their support or provide witness statements. One passenger, a lawyer from Chicago, handed Malcolm his business card. What happened to you was textbook discrimination, he said. I recorded the whole thing. Call me if you need another witness. By evening, the story had grown beyond Malcolm's removal. Investigative journalists began digging into Horizon Airlines' history, uncovering a pattern of discrimination complaints filed by minority employees over the years. Most had been settled quietly or dismissed without action. On major news networks, commentators debated whether Malcolm's race had played a factor in his treatment. Competing airlines, sensing blood in the water, began subtle marketing campaigns, emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Horizon Airlines is about to get a very expensive lesson in corporate accountability, Robin remarked as they watched the coverage. Coleman approached again, this time with a tablet displaying a live video feed of CEO Davidson. Captain Washington, I wanted to speak with you directly, Davidson began. What happened today was inexcusable. I want to personally apologize and assure you that we're taking immediate action to address both the specific incident and our broader company culture." Malcolm listened as Davidson outlined steps the company planned to take: sensitivity training, revised reporting protocols, and a review of promotion practices. "We'd also like to offer you a settlement that reflects the seriousness of what occurred," Davidson concluded. "With a non-disclosure agreement, I assume?" Malcolm asked. Davidson looked uncomfortable. "That would be standard procedure in such cases, yes." "Then I'm not interested," Malcolm stated flatly. "This isn't about money for me. It's about ensuring this doesn't happen to anyone else." After the call ended, Malcolm checked his email to find a message from a rival airline. The subject line read, "Executive Safety Officer, position, immediate consideration." That night in the hotel room, Horizon had provided Malcolm faced a difficult conversation with Jasmine. "They're offering me a way out," he explained, showing her the rival airline's email. "A better position, more money, fresh start." Jasmine considered this. Would taking it accomplish what you want, or would it let Horizon off the hook? "That's exactly what I'm struggling with," Malcolm admitted. Personal gain versus pushing for systemic change. As they discussed the options, Malcolm's phone rang again. It was Zoe. "Dad, I saw everything online," she said immediately. "The kids at school were talking about it. Some of them have parents who work for airlines, and they're saying awful things." Malcolm's heart sank. He hadn't considered how this would affect his daughter. "Zoe, I'm sorry you're dealing with that, but I want you to know something important. I did the right thing today. Sometimes doing the right thing has consequences." "I know, Dad," Zoe replied. "I'm proud of you. I just wanted you to know what's happening here." After the call, Malcolm turned to Jasmine. "Whatever I decide, it affects all of us. Then we decide together," she said, taking his hand. "But remember what you always tell Zoe. The easy path and the right path are rarely the same." The following morning, Malcolm sat across from journalist Alana Reed in a hotel conference room that had been hastily converted into an interview set. Lights were positioned strategically, and 2 cameras captured different angles. Malcolm wore a fresh uniform provided by Horizon Airlines. His torn one had become evidence in the investigation. "Captain Washington, take us through what happened yesterday," Alana began once the cameras were rolling. With measured words, Malcolm recounted the events, from noticing the hydraulic leak to his forcible removal from the aircraft and the subsequent grounding of the flight when his safety concerns were finally taken seriously. "Would you say race was a factor in how you were treated?" Alana asked directly. Malcolm paused, considering his words carefully. "I can only speak to what I experienced. When a white passenger reported the exact same safety concern I had reported minutes earlier, he was thanked and taken seriously. When I, a black pilot in full uniform with 15 years of experience, reported it, I was dismissed and ultimately removed from the aircraft. Those are the facts." Horizon Airlines has issued a statement calling the incident a serious breakdown in communication and protocols. Do you agree with that characterization? "It's a convenient explanation," Malcolm replied, "but it doesn't address why the breakdown happened specifically with me. This isn't just about one incident. It's about a pattern that many minority professionals experience daily." The interview continued for 30 minutes, with Malcolm maintaining his composure while making powerful points about aviation safety, culture, and racial bias in the industry. When it concluded, Alana thanked him. "This is going to make waves," she predicted. "It's already the top story, but your perspective adds another dimension." Outside the interview room, Malcolm found Robin reviewing documents on her tablet. "There's been a development," she informed him. "Brett Thompson and Frank Miller, the security officers, have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation." "That's a start," Malcolm acknowledged. "There's more," Robin continued. "The Airline Pilot Union has issued a statement supporting you and condemning your removal as a violation of safety protocols and possibly discriminatory. They're demanding a full investigation." Throughout the day, news of the incident continued to spread. Malcolm's interview aired nationally, prompting new rounds of discussion and debate. Horizon Airlines stock continued to fall, now down 12% from its pre-incident value. Captain Roy Bennett, who had allowed security to remove Malcolm, appeared on a competing network in what was clearly a damage control attempt by the airline. There was a miscommunication, Bennett claimed, looking uncomfortable. In the moment with boarding in progress, I didn't have all the facts. I deeply regret not taking more time to assess the situation. Flight attendant Heather Brooks also made a public appearance, tears streaming down her face as she insisted she wasn't racist. I would have responded the same way to any passenger who was being insistent during boarding, she claimed. I didn't realize he was actually our pilot. Social media users quickly pointed out the flaws in her explanation, noting that Malcolm had shown his credentials multiple times and was in full uniform. By afternoon, Malcolm received an unexpected call from an old Air Force colleague who now worked for the Department of Transportation. "Malcolm, I saw what happened. I'm not surprised you stood your ground," his friend said. "Listen, I've been authorized to tell you that the DOT is looking into Horizon's handling of this incident as part of a broader review of airline safety culture and discrimination issues." "That's good to hear," Malcolm replied. "This needs to be more than just a news cycle." As Malcolm and Jasmine walked through the airport later that day, people recognized him continually. Some asked for photos, others simply offered words of support. A group of young black aviation students approached him nervously. "Sir, we're from the local flight school," one explained. "What you did yesterday, it means a lot to us." Malcolm spent 20 minutes talking with the students, encouraging them to pursue their dreams despite the obstacles they might face. When they returned to their hotel, Malcolm found an email from a journalist who had been investigating Horizon Airlines. Attached were internal company documents showing a pattern of discrimination complaints filed by minority crew members over the past 5 years. Most had been settled with non-disclosure agreements or dismissed without action. "They're going to try to make this about one incident, one miscommunication," Jasmine observed as they reviewed the documents. "But this shows it's systemic." Malcolm forwarded the documents to Robin and the FAA investigator. This changes the conversation. That evening, as Malcolm prepared for another day of interviews, he received a call from Philip Coleman. "Captain Washington, the FAA has expanded their investigation to include our safety culture generally, not just this specific incident," Coleman informed him, sounding strained. "They're reviewing all safety reports from the past 3 years." "Good," Malcolm replied simply. "There's something else," Coleman continued reluctantly. "Internal emails have been uncovered showing that management was aware of previous reports of hydraulic issues on the same aircraft type you identified." Malcolm sat down heavily. "So this wasn't just about me being ignored. It was about a known issue being repeatedly dismissed." "It appears that way," Coleman admitted. "The terminal supervisor who refused to verify your identity, Gregory Adams, has been terminated for falsifying his report about the incident. And we've been authorized to offer you a settlement." "With a non-disclosure agreement, I assume." "Yes," Coleman confirmed. "It's substantial, Captain Washington. 7 figures." Malcolm thought about what that money could mean for his family, for Zoe's college fund, for the retirement he and Jasmine had been saving for. But he also thought about those aviation students he'd met, about his colleagues who had shared their own stories of discrimination. "I need to discuss this with my family," Malcolm said finally. That night, the discussion with Jasmine was intense. "This is life-changing money, Malcolm," she acknowledged. "But I know what taking it would mean. If I sign that NDA, the whole story gets buried," Malcolm explained. "No one learns from it. Nothing really changes." Zoe, joining the conversation by video call, had her own perspective. "Dad, you always told me that integrity isn't about what you do when everyone's watching. It's about what you do when you have to sacrifice something." Malcolm smiled proudly at his daughter's wisdom. "When did you get so smart?" As they talked into the night, Malcolm's phone pinged with an email notification. It was from the rival airline that had contacted him earlier. "They've offered me a position as chief safety officer," he told Jasmine, reading the details. "Executive level with oversight authority for their entire operation." "That's the promotion Horizon denied you 3 times, Jasmine noted. Malcolm nodded, considering the opportunity. It would be a fresh start. But would it create the change you're fighting for? Jasmine asked. The question hung in the air as Malcolm contemplated his next move, weighing personal advancement against the potential for broader impact. The conference room at the FAA's regional office in Charlotte was filled beyond capacity. Keith Donovan had expanded his investigation team to include specialists from various departments, and the evidence they had accumulated in just 3 days was substantial. These internal documents from Horizon Airlines show a clear pattern, Donovan explained, displaying records on a large screen. Safety concerns reported by minority crew members were statistically less likely to be acted upon promptly compared to those reported by white crew members. Malcolm, seated beside Robin Foster, reviewed the data with a mixture of vindication and dismay. The numbers confirmed what he and other minority colleagues had sensed for years, but could never prove conclusively. We've also identified 17 previous instances where maintenance issues similar to the hydraulic leak you reported were documented but deferred, Donovan continued. In 3 cases, these deferrals led to in-flight incidents that could have been prevented. The door opened, and Samuel Washington, the FAA duty officer who had initially taken Malcolm's call, entered with a thick folder. The company emails you forwarded have been authenticated, Samuel informed the group. They confirmed that senior maintenance management was aware of recurring hydraulic issues with this aircraft type and had implemented a policy of deferring repairs to minimize downtime. So not only was I removed for reporting a safety concern, Malcolm clarified, but the company was actively trying to avoid addressing known issues. That appears to be the case, Donovan confirmed. This has evolved beyond a discrimination investigation into a serious safety culture problem. Later that afternoon, Malcolm met privately with a group of black pilots from Horizon and other airlines who had reached out after seeing his story in the news. They gathered in a hotel conference room, sharing experiences that paralleled Malcolm's own. I reported a malfunctioning weather radar 3 times before they finally addressed it, said James Thompson, a first officer with 8 years at Horizon. My white captain made the same report once, and maintenance was there within minutes. It's not just safety issues, added Tasha Williams, a captain with another major carrier. It's promotions, scheduling, everything. We have to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. Malcolm listened intently, taking notes. We need to document all of this, not just for my case, but for the industry as a whole. By the end of the meeting, they had formed an informal alliance of minority aviation professionals committed to addressing systemic discrimination in the industry. They planned to create a secure reporting system where incidents could be documented and patterns identified. Meanwhile, the FAA investigation had uncovered more troubling information. Emails between Horizon Airlines executives revealed discussions about the costs of addressing recurring maintenance issues versus the calculated risk of deferring them. This is beyond concerning, Donovan told Malcolm after sharing the findings. It suggests a corporate culture that prioritizes cost savings over safety in some instances. As word of these discoveries spread through internal channels, Horizon Airlines faced mounting pressure from multiple directions. The pilot union demanded transparency about maintenance practices. Shareholders filed inquiries about potential liability. And the Department of Transportation announced a broader review of the airline's compliance with federal regulations. That evening, Philip Coleman requested another meeting with Malcolm. They met in the now familiar hotel lounge, but this time Coleman brought Horizon's Chief Legal Officer Victoria Martinez. Captain Washington Martinez began without preamble, the company would like to offer you a revised settlement package. Double the previous amount with modified non-disclosure terms that would allow you to discuss the discrimination aspects of your experience while limiting comments about specific maintenance practices. Malcolm exchanged glances with Robin. So I could talk about being removed for being black, but not about the company ignoring safety concerns. In essence, yes, Martinez confirmed. We recognize the importance of addressing discrimination issues. The maintenance policies are being revised internally. Behind closed doors, Malcolm noted skeptically. With FAA oversight, Coleman added quickly. Robin leaned forward. My client appreciates the improved offer, but he remains concerned about the systemic issues that led to this incident. What structural changes is Horizon prepared to make? Martinez opened a folder. We are prepared to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff, revise our safety reporting protocols to include anonymous submission options, and create a diversity officer position at the executive level. Those are positive steps, Malcolm acknowledged. But they don't address accountability for what happened. The personnel involved in your removal have been disciplined appropriately, Coleman assured him. And the executives who created the culture that made it possible, Malcolm pressed. Martinez's expression tightened. Personnel matters at that level are confidential. As the meeting concluded without resolution, Malcolm received a text message from Zoe. "Dad, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. Just want you to be happy." The message made Malcolm pause. The stress of the past few days had been enormous, not just on him, but on his family. The rival airline's offer of an executive position remained open, a path to personal advancement and a fresh start away from the controversy. That night, Malcolm discussed the options with Jasmine again. "I've been thinking about something," she said thoughtfully. "What if there's a third option? Not taking their hush money and not walking away to another airline, but using this moment to create real change at Horizon." "What do you mean?" Malcolm asked. "You have leverage right now. What if instead of monetary compensation, you demanded structural changes that you would help implement? A position with real authority to address both the safety culture and the discrimination issues." Malcolm considered this. They'd never agree to that. "They might," Jasmine countered. "Their stock is still falling. The FAA investigation is expanding. They need to do something dramatic to restore confidence." As they discussed the possibility, Malcolm's phone rang. It was Philip Coleman again. "Captain Washington," Coleman said, sounding tired. "The CEO would like to speak with you first thing tomorrow. He's flying in specifically for this meeting." Malcolm raised an eyebrow at Jasmine. "Tell him I'll be there," he replied, "and I'll have some proposals of my own to discuss." The executive conference room at Horizon Airlines Charlotte Operations Center was unusually quiet as Malcolm entered, accompanied by Robin Foster. CEO Lawrence Davidson rose from his seat at the head of the table, extending his hand. "Captain Washington, thank you for coming," Davidson said, his expression grave. "The events of the past week have forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our company." Malcolm nodded, taking a seat across from Davidson. Also present were Philip Coleman, Victoria Martinez, and 2 board members who had flown in for the meeting. "Before we begin," Davidson continued, "I want to personally apologize for what happened to you. It was inexcusable, and it has revealed serious flaws in both our safety culture and our handling of diversity issues." "I appreciate that," Malcolm replied. "But I'm more interested in actions than apologies at this point." Davidson nodded. "Understandable. We've prepared a comprehensive settlement offer that we believe addresses both your personal grievances and the broader issues at play." He slid a folder across the table. Robin examined the documents first, her eyebrows rising slightly as she reviewed the terms. She passed the folder to Malcolm, who studied it carefully. The offer was substantial, far more than the previous proposals. But what caught Malcolm's attention were the structural changes outlined in the latter pages. A complete overhaul of safety reporting protocols, mandatory bias training for all staff, and the creation of a new executive position, overseeing both safety, compliance, and diversity initiatives. "This is more comprehensive than your previous offers," Malcolm acknowledged. "But there's still the matter of a non-disclosure agreement." Davidson exchanged glances with the board members before responding. "We're prepared to modify those terms significantly. You would be free to discuss your experience and the changes being implemented. We're asking only that certain proprietary maintenance details remain confidential as they involve our competitive practices." Malcolm considered this. "And the personnel who were directly involved." "Brett Thompson and Frank Miller have been terminated," Coleman interjected. "Captain Bennett has been demoted and reassigned to ground training duties. The flight attendants have received formal reprimands and will undergo additional training." Malcolm nodded, then closed the folder. "I've considered your offer and I've prepared a counter-proposal." He removed a document from his briefcase and handed it to Davidson. "What's this?" Davidson asked, scanning the first page. My conditions for returning to Horizon Airlines, Malcolm explained. Rather than accepting monetary compensation, I'm proposing that you create a new position, Chief Safety Officer, with oversight authority for both operational safety and reporting practices. I would fill this role. The executives exchanged surprised glances. You want to stay with Horizon? Martinez asked incredulously. After everything that happened, sometimes change has to come from within, Malcolm replied. I've spent 15 years building my career here. Walking away with a settlement might benefit me personally, but it wouldn't address the underlying issues that affect all minority employees and ultimately passenger safety. Davidson studied the proposal carefully. These are significant changes you're suggesting. Yes, they are, Malcolm agreed. But they're necessary ones, and they'll send a powerful message that Horizon is serious about transformation, not just damage control. We'll need to discuss this privately, Davidson said after a moment. Of course, Malcolm replied, standing. Robin and I will wait outside. In the hallway, Robin looked at Malcolm with a mixture of concern and admiration. Are you sure about this? The settlement would have set you up financially for life. I'm sure, Malcolm confirmed. This isn't just about me anymore. After 45 minutes, they were called back into the conference room. We've reviewed your proposal, Davidson announced. With some modifications regarding reporting structure, we're prepared to accept it. We would like to offer you the position of Chief Safety Officer effective immediately with the authority and budget you've outlined. Malcolm felt a surge of satisfaction. There's one more condition. I want to establish an anonymous reporting system for discrimination incidents with direct oversight by a committee that includes minority representation. Davidson hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. We'll need to work out the details, but the principle is sound. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the scheduling of follow-up discussions to implement the agreed-upon changes. As Malcolm and Robin left the building, they found Jasmine waiting in the lobby. Well, she asked expectantly. They accepted, Malcolm told her with a smile. No settlement, but real change instead. Jasmine embraced him tightly. I'm so proud of you. 6 months later, Malcolm Washington stood in the cockpit of a Horizon Airlines Airbus, a 320, preparing for a flight from Charlotte to Chicago, the same route he had been prevented from flying that fateful day. As Chief Safety Officer, he had already implemented significant changes to the company's reporting systems and safety culture. Discrimination complaints were down, and safety compliance was up. The cockpit door opened and Malcolm turned to see Heather Brooks, the flight attendant from the original incident, entering with pre-flight paperwork. Captain Washington, she said, her tone professional but tinged with nervousness. All passengers are boarded and secured. Malcolm nodded. Thank you, Miss Brooks. An awkward silence hung between them, filled with the memory of their last encounter. I just wanted to say, Heather began hesitantly, the new reporting protocols you implemented, they've made a difference. Everyone feels more comfortable speaking up now. That's the goal, Malcolm replied. Safety depends on everyone being heard, regardless of their position or background. Heather nodded, then exited the cockpit. Malcolm turned to his first officer, a young black pilot named Devin Carter, part of a mentorship program Malcolm had established. Ready for takeoff? Malcolm asked. Devin grinned. Absolutely, sir. As they completed their pre-flight checks, Malcolm reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What had begun as a humiliating, unjust experience had transformed into an opportunity for meaningful change, not just for himself, but for an entire industry. Let's change the sky together, Malcolm said to Devin as they prepared for takeoff. The young pilot nodded, understanding the significance of the moment. As the aircraft lifted into the air, Malcolm felt a sense of pride in knowing that his stand against discrimination had created ripples far beyond one flight, one airline, or even one industry. Sometimes the hardest moments become the most important turning points. What would you have done in Malcolm's position? Would you have taken the settlement or fought for systemic change like he did? Drop a comment below letting us know if you believe in standing up against discrimination and fighting for what's right. Hit that like button, Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of triumph over adversity. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, real change happens when brave individuals refuse to accept the status quo. Thank you for watching, and may you always have the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Malcolm Washington's story teaches us that standing up against discrimination requires both courage and strategy. When faced with injustice, Malcolm could have taken the easy path, accepting a settlement and walking away. Instead, he chose the harder road of creating systemic change from within the system. This story highlights several important lessons. First, documentation is crucial. Malcolm's photos of the hydraulic leak provided irrefutable evidence that his safety concerns were legitimate. Second, knowing your rights and regulations gives you power. Malcolm's understanding of FAA protocols enabled him to ground the flight legally. Third, social media and public attention can amplify individual voices and pressure organizations to respond. Most importantly, Malcolm demonstrates that true leadership sometimes means sacrificing personal gain for collective improvement. By rejecting a lucrative settlement in favor of a position where he could implement real changes, he prioritized long-term transformation over short-term benefits. The story also reveals how discrimination often manifests not as overt hatred, but as differential treatment. The same safety concern reported by a white passenger was taken seriously, while Malcolm's identical report was dismissed. Recognizing these subtle patterns is essential for addressing systemic racism. Ultimately, Malcolm's journey reminds us that changing entrenched systems requires persistence, strategy, and a willingness to work from within to transform the very institutions that once harmed you. What would you have done if you were in Malcolm's position? Would you have taken the settlement money or fought for systemic change like he did? Drop a comment below sharing what you think you would have done in this situation. If Malcolm's courage to stand up against discrimination inspired you, please hit that like button to help more people see his powerful story. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination in your workplace? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments. Your story might help someone else facing similar challenges. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles and turning injustice into positive change. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Thank you for watching this journey of courage, resilience, and transformation. May you always find the strength to stand up for what's right, even when facing powerful opposition. Remember, sometimes the most important changes come from those brave enough to say this isn't right when everyone else stays silent.